When a widowed rancher finds a dying Apache woman in the dust, he makes a choice that will shatter the silence of his grief-stricken home forever. Ethan Cole has spent years building walls around his heart, raising two daughters in the shadow of loss. But one act of compassion will bring a stranger into their isolated world, a woman who doesn't speak their language, doesn't share their blood, and carries secrets in her wounded eyes. What begins as mercy becomes something far more dangerous, the possibility of healing. Will you stay with me until the end of this story? Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this journey travels. The ranch stretched out under a sky so wide it made a man feel both small and sovereign at once. Ethan Cole stood at the fence line, one boot propped on the lower rail, watching the horizon blur in the heat. His hands were calloused, scarred from years of wire and wood, and his face had the weathered look of someone who'd stopped expecting softness from the world. Behind him, the house sat quiet. Too quiet. It had been that way for 3 years now since Sarah died, since the fever took her in the span of a week, leaving him with 2 little girls and a silence so thick it pressed against the walls. He tried to fill it with work, with routine, with the steady rhythm of cattle and fences and dawn-to-dusk labor. But silence had a way of seeping back in, especially at night when Lily and Nora were asleep, and the house felt like a tomb. He heard the creak of the porch door and turned. Lily stood there barefoot, her dark hair falling loose around her shoulders. She was 9 now, old enough to notice things, old enough to feel the weight of what wasn't said. "Papa," she called. "Nora won't eat her breakfast." Ethan sighed and pushed off the fence. "She say why?" "She doesn't say much of anything anymore." He knew that. Nora had been 5 when Sarah died, and something in her had gone quiet too. She spoke when spoken to, did her chores without complaint, but there was a distance in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Like she was living in a house made of glass, watching the world from somewhere far away. Inside, the kitchen smelled of burnt coffee and biscuits. Nora sat at the table, small and still, staring at her plate. Her hands were folded in her lap, and she didn't look up when Ethan walked in. "Morning, sweetheart," he said, keeping his voice gentle. She nodded, but didn't speak. Ethan poured himself a cup of coffee and sat down across from her. "You not hungry?" "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." Lily hovered near the stove, her arms crossed. She had their mother's eyes, sharp, worried, always watching. "She's been like this all week." Ethan studied Nora's face. She was pale, thinner than she should be. He didn't know what to do about it. He could fix a fence, mend a saddle, doctor a sick cow. But this hollowness that had settled over his youngest daughter, was beyond him. "All right," he said finally. "You don't have to eat if you're not hungry, but I want you to drink some milk at least." Nora picked up her glass and took a small sip, then set it down again. Lily made a frustrated sound and turned back to the dishes. Ethan finished his coffee in silence. When he stood to leave, he rested a hand briefly on Nora's head. She didn't lean into it the way she used to. She just sat there, waiting for him to move on. The morning chores took longer than usual. One of the horses had thrown a shoe, and the water trough had sprung a leak. By the time Ethan saddled up to check the northern pasture, the sun was already high and mean. He rode out alone. The land here was hard and beautiful in equal measure, rolling hills covered in dry grass, scattered juniper, and sky that went on forever. It was the kind of country that either broke you or made you stronger. Sarah used to say it was both. He missed her most out here, where the silence wasn't oppressive but clean. She'd ridden with him sometimes, back when the girls were smaller. She'd had a way of making the loneliness feel like solitude instead of exile. Now it just felt empty. The cattle were scattered across the far ridge, grazing in the sparse shade. Ethan counted them out of habit, checking for stragglers or signs of sickness. Everything looked normal until he reached the dry creek bed near the eastern boundary. That's when he saw her. At first he thought it was a bundle of rags caught in the rocks, but as he rode closer, the shape resolved into something human. A woman, lying face down in the dust, one arm stretched out as if reaching for something that wasn't there. Ethan dismounted quickly, his heart kicking hard in his chest. He knelt beside her and turned her over, careful not to jostle her too much. She was Apache. He knew it from her clothing, the beadwork on her torn shirt, the way her dark hair was braided. Her face was bruised and swollen, her lips cracked and bleeding. There was a gash across her temple, crusted with dried blood, and her breathing was shallow and uneven. For a moment, he just stared at her, his mind racing. The Apache had been pushed further south over the past few years, driven out by soldiers and settlers and the slow, grinding machinery of displacement. There were still conflicts, still raids, still bitter tension between the tribes and the ranchers who'd claimed their land. Bringing an Apache woman onto his property, into his home, was the kind of thing that could get him killed or run out of the territory. But leaving her here was the same as killing her himself. Ethan cursed under his breath and checked her pulse. It was faint but steady. He looked around, half expecting to see someone watching from the ridge, but there was nothing, just wind and dust and the distant cry of a hawk. "All right," he muttered. "All right." He lifted her carefully, surprised by how light she was, and draped her across his saddle. She didn't wake, didn't make a sound. He mounted behind her, holding her steady with one arm, and turned his horse toward home. Lily saw him coming from the porch and ran to meet him, her face pale with alarm. "Papa, what? Who is that?" "Help me get her inside," Ethan said, sliding down from the saddle. "Quickly!" Lily hesitated for only a second, then moved to support the woman's legs as Ethan carried her into the house. Nora appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Get some water and clean rags," Ethan told Lily, "and bring the medicine kit." He laid the woman on the bed in the spare room, the room that used to be Sarah's sewing space and had sat unused for 3 years. The air inside was stale and dusty, but the bed was still made, the quilt faded but clean. Lily returned with a basin of water and a stack of cloth. She stood at the foot of the bed, staring. "Is she going to die?" Nora asked quietly from the doorway. "Not if I can help it," Ethan said. He peeled back the woman's shirt and winced. There were bruises along her ribs, deep and ugly, and what looked like a burn across her shoulder. "Lily, I need you to help me clean these wounds. Can you do that?" Lily swallowed hard and nodded. They worked in silence, washing away the blood and dirt, dabbing at the cuts with careful hands. The woman stirred once, moaning softly, but she didn't wake. When they'd done all they could, Ethan covered her with a blanket and sat back, exhausted. "Who is she?" Lily asked. "I don't know." "Why was she out there alone?" "I don't know that either." Nora crept closer, her eyes fixed on the woman's face. "She's pretty." Ethan looked at his youngest daughter, surprised. It was the most she'd said all week. "Yeah," he said quietly. "She is, Chapocan." The woman didn't wake that night, or the next day. Ethan checked on her between chores, bringing fresh water, adjusting the blankets. Lily helped without being asked, and even Nora lingered in the doorway, watching. On the 3rd day, Ethan was sitting beside the bed, changing the bandage on her temple, when her eyes fluttered open. She stared at him for a long moment, her gaze dark and unfocused. Then she tried to sit up, gasping, her hands scrabbling at the blanket. "Easy," Ethan said, holding up his hands. "You're safe. You're all right." She didn't understand him. That much was clear. She looked around the room, her breathing quick and shallow, her body tense like a cornered animal. "It's all right," Ethan said again, slower this time. He pointed to himself. "Ethan." Then to the water glass on the table. "Water." She stared at him, uncomprehending. He picked up the glass and held it out to her. "Water." She looked at it, then at him, then back at the glass. Slowly, she reached out and took it. Her hands were shaking, but she managed to drink, small sips at first, then longer ones. When the glass was empty, she handed it back and sank against the pillows, her eyes closing. Ethan set the glass down and stood. "You rest. We'll figure the rest out later." She didn't respond. She was already asleep again. Over the next few days, a fragile routine took shape. The woman, Ethan still didn't know her name, was weak but healing. She slept most of the time, and when she was awake, she watched them with wary, unreadable eyes. Lily brought her soup and bread, sitting quietly while she ate. Nora left wildflowers on the bedside table, never saying a word but always there, hovering just outside the door. Ethan kept his distance, giving her space. He didn't know what she'd been through, didn't know what she was running from or who might come looking for her. But he knew fear when he saw it, and she was full of it. On the 5th day, she spoke. Ethan was bringing in firewood when he heard her voice, soft and halting, coming from the spare room. He set the wood down and walked to the doorway. She was sitting up in bed looking at Lily, who sat cross-legged on the floor with a picture book open in her lap. "Ayana," the woman said, pressing a hand to her chest. "Ayana." Lily's face lit up. "Your name? Ayana?" The woman nodded slowly. Lily pointed to herself. "Lily," then to her sister who stood in the hallway. "Nora." Ayana repeated the names carefully, her accent thick but clear. "Lily?" "Nora." Ethan stepped into the room. "Ethan," he said, pointing to himself. Ayana looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Ethan." It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next week brought small changes. Ayana grew stronger, able to stand, to walk slowly around the room. She didn't speak much. Her English was limited, and Ethan's Apache was non-existent, but she communicated in other ways. A nod, a gesture, a look. Lily took to teaching her words, pointing at objects and saying their names. Ayana learned quickly, repeating them with a quiet intensity that reminded Ethan of someone trying to memorize a map in enemy territory. Nora watched from the edges, still silent, still distant. But Ethan noticed the way she looked at Ayana, like she was trying to solve a puzzle she didn't have all the pieces to. One afternoon, Ethan came in from the fields to find Ayana sitting at the kitchen table, peeling potatoes. Lily was beside her, chattering about something inconsequential, and Ayana listened with a faint smile on her lips. "You don't have to do that," Ethan said. Ayana looked up at him, her hand stilling. "I help," she said carefully. "You're still healing." "I help," she repeated, firmer this time. Ethan didn't argue. He could see the determination in her eyes, the need to be useful, to earn her place. He understood that. "All right," he said. "Thank you." She nodded and went back to the potatoes. That night, after the girls were asleep, Ethan sat on the porch with a cup of coffee, staring out at the dark expanse of land. The stars were thick overhead, cold and bright. He heard the door open behind him and turned to see Ayana standing there, wrapped in one of Sarah's old shawls. She hesitated, then stepped out onto the porch and sat down on the opposite end of the bench. They sat in silence for a while, the night sounds filling the space between them, crickets, the distant howl of a coyote, the wind moving through the grass. "Why?" Ayana said finally, her voice quiet. Ethan looked at her. "Why what?" "Why you help me?" He thought about it for a moment, turning the question over in his mind. "Because it was the right thing to do." She studied him, her dark eyes searching his face. "You not afraid?" "Of what?" "My people. Your people. War." Ethan let out a slow breath. "Yeah, I'm afraid. But I couldn't leave you out there to die." Ayana looked down at her hands. "You good man." "I don't know about that." "You are," she said, and there was a weight to the words, a certainty that made him uncomfortable. They lapsed into silence again. After a while, Ayana stood and went back inside, moving quietly so as not to wake the girls. Ethan stayed on the porch a little longer, thinking about Sarah, about the life they'd built here, about the girls growing up in the shadow of her absence. And now this stranger, this woman who'd come out of the dust and the violence and somehow found her way into his home. He didn't know what it meant, didn't know where it would lead. But for the first time in 3 years, the silence didn't feel quite so heavy. The days stretched into weeks. Ayana's wounds healed, the bruises fading to yellow and green before disappearing altogether. She moved through the house with increasing confidence, helping with the cooking, mending clothes, tending the small vegetable garden behind the house. Lily followed her everywhere, soaking up her presence like sunlight. Nora remained cautious, but Ethan noticed her inching closer, drawn in despite herself. One morning, Ethan woke to the sound of laughter. He sat up, disoriented, wondering if he'd dreamed it, but then he heard it again, clear and bright, coming from the kitchen. He dressed quickly and walked out to find Lily and Ayana at the stove, flour dusted across their faces and hands. They were making bread, and Lily was giggling as Ayana shaped the dough into clumsy, lopsided rounds. "It looks like a rock," Lily said, laughing. "Good rock," Ayana said, grinning. "Strong rock. Nora sat at the table, watching them with wide eyes. And for the first time in as long as Ethan could remember, there was a softness in her expression, a hint of the little girl she used to be. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, his chest tight with something he couldn't quite name. This was what he'd been missing. This lightness, this ease, this sense of life happening instead of just enduring. Ayanna looked up and saw him watching. Her smile faded slightly, replaced by something more uncertain. "We make bread," she said. "I see that. Is okay?" "Yeah," Ethan said, his voice rough. "It's okay." But not everyone saw it that way. 2 weeks later, Ethan was in town buying supplies when he ran into Thomas Merrick, a neighboring rancher. Merrick was a hard man, quick to anger and slow to forgive. He'd lost a son in a skirmish with Apache raiders 5 years back, and the hatred had settled into him like rot. "Heard you got yourself a house guest," Merrick said, his tone casual but his eyes cold. Ethan kept loading sacks of flour into the wagon. "News travels fast. Indian woman, they say." "She needed help." Merrick spat into the dust. "You're a fool, Cole. You know what people are going to think?" "I don't much care what people think. You should. You got daughters to think about. Bringing one of them into your house, it ain't right." Ethan straightened, his jaw tight. "She's a person, Merrick, not a threat." "Tell that to my boy." The words hung in the air, sharp and bitter. Ethan took a breath, forcing himself to stay calm. "I'm sorry for your loss, I am. But that doesn't give you the right to—" "The right?" Merrick stepped closer, his voice dropping to a growl. "You think you got rights out here? You think that woman's got rights? This is our land now, Cole. We fought for it. We bled for it. And you're spitting on that by sheltering one of them." "I'm done with this conversation," Ethan said, turning back to the wagon. Merrick grabbed his arm. "You listen to me." Ethan yanked his arm free and faced him, his eyes hard. "No. You listen. What I do on my land is my business. You got a problem with that. You take it up with me. But you leave her out of it." Merrick stared at him for a long moment, then stepped back, shaking his head. "You're going to regret this, Cole. Mark my words." Ethan climbed into the wagon and drove away, his hands tight on the reins. When he got home, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the ranch. He unloaded the supplies in silence, his mind churning with Merrick's words. He knew the man was right about one thing. People were going to talk. They were going to judge. And if the wrong person decided to make an issue of it, things could get dangerous. But when he walked into the house and saw Ayanna at the stove, stirring a pot of stew, and Lily setting the table, and Nora actually smiling as she folded napkins, he couldn't bring himself to care. This was his home, his family, and for the first time since Sarah died, it felt like one. "Smells good," he said, hanging his hat by the door. Ayanna looked over her shoulder and smiled. "You hungry?" "Starving." They ate together, the four of them, and the conversation was easy and warm. Lily told a story about a bird she'd seen that morning. Nora asked Ayanna to teach her a word in Apache. Ethan listened, letting the sound of their voices wash over him. Later, after the girls were in bed, Ayanna helped him clean up. "You quiet tonight," she said as she dried a plate. "Just tired." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. When the kitchen was clean, Ethan walked her to the spare room. She paused at the door, looking up at him. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." "You don't have to thank me." "I do." She hesitated, then reached out and touched his hand briefly. "You give me life. You give me home." Ethan felt something shift in his chest, a crack in the wall he'd built around himself. "Good night, Ayanna," he said. "Good night, Ethan." She closed the door, and he stood there for a moment, staring at the worn wood, feeling the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on him. Then he turned and walked to his own room, where the bed was too big and the silence too loud. But tonight, it felt a little less empty. The change didn't happen all at once. It crept in slowly, like dawn breaking over the hills, so gradual you didn't notice until the darkness was already gone. Ethan woke earlier than usual the next morning, disturbed by a dream he couldn't quite remember. He lay in bed for a while, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle around him. Then he heard it, the soft murmur of voices from the kitchen, the clatter of dishes, and something that sounded like humming. He dressed and walked out to find Ayanna already at the stove, her hair pulled back in a loose braid, steam rising from a pot of oatmeal. Nora sat at the table, actually eating, her spoon moving steadily from bowl to mouth. Lily was setting out cups, talking about a dream she'd had about horses. "Morning," Ethan said, and all three of them looked up. "Papa, Ayanna made breakfast," Lily announced, as if this were a remarkable achievement. "I see that." Ayanna glanced at him, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. "Is good?" "Smells good," he said, pouring himself coffee. "Thank you." She nodded and turned back to the stove, but he caught the small smile on her lips. They ate together, and the silence that had once filled this room like water in a well was replaced by something else, the sound of spoons scraping bowls, Lily chattering about nothing important, Nora asking for more milk in a voice so quiet Ethan almost missed it. He watched Ayanna across the table, noticing things he hadn't before. The way she moved with economy and grace, wasting no motion. The way she listened to Lily's endless questions with genuine interest. The way her eyes tracked Nora, attentive but not intrusive, as if she understood the girl's need for space. After breakfast, Ayanna started clearing the dishes. Ethan stood to help, but she waved him off. "You work," she said. "I do this." "You don't have to." "I know." She met his eyes. "I want to." He didn't argue. There was something in her expression that told him this mattered to her, this small act of contribution, of belonging. Outside, the morning was cool and bright. Ethan spent the first few hours mending fence line on the western pasture, working alone with his thoughts. The physical labor was familiar, grounding, wire and wood and sweat, things he understood. Not like the confusion he felt when he looked at Ayanna. She was healing well, strong enough now to leave if she wanted to. He should probably ask her what her plans were, where she intended to go. But every time he thought about bringing it up, something stopped him. The girls, he told himself. They'd gotten attached. It would be hard on them if she left. But he knew that wasn't the whole truth. When he came back to the house around midday, he found Ayanna in the garden, kneeling in the dirt, pulling weeds from around the tomato plants. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, and there was a stillness about her that made him pause. "You know plants," he said. She looked up, shading her eyes from the sun. "My mother teach me, long time ago." "Your family," he hesitated. "Are they still out there, looking for you?" Her expression closed off, and he immediately regretted asking. "I sorry," she said, turning back to the weeds. "I not talk about this." "You don't have to." "Thank you." He stood there for a moment longer, then headed inside, feeling like he'd stepped on something fragile without meaning to. That afternoon, while Ethan was checking the horses, he heard voices coming from the barn. He walked over and found Lily and Ayanna inside, sitting on hay bales. Lily was teaching Ayanna to braid, using long strands of dried grass. "Like this," Lily said, demonstrating. "Over, under, over, under." Ayanna watched closely, then tried it herself. Her fingers fumbled at first, but she caught on quickly. "Good," Lily said. "Now you try on my hair." Ayanna hesitated. "You sure?" "Yes. Mama used to braid my hair all the time, but Papa doesn't know how." The mention of Sarah hung in the air for a moment. Ethan tensed, waiting for the grief to slam into him the way it usually did. But it didn't. Not this time. Ayanna carefully gathered Lily's hair and began to braid, her movements gentle and deliberate. Lily sat very still, her eyes closed, a small smile on her face. Ethan turned and walked away before they saw him, something tight and painful lodged in his chest. That evening, Nora came to him with a request. "Papa?" she said, standing in the doorway of the barn where he was oiling saddles. "Can Ayanna stay?" He looked up, surprised. "What? Can she stay here with us?" Ethan set down the rag he'd been using. "Come here." Nora walked over and stood in front of him, her small hands clasped together. "Why do you want her to stay?" he asked gently. "Because she's nice, and she makes Lily laugh, and—" She paused, her eyes dropping to the floor. "And it doesn't feel so empty anymore." The words hit him harder than he expected. He pulled Nora into his arms, holding her close. She was so small, so breakable, and he'd been so focused on his own grief that he hadn't fully understood hers. "I don't know if she wants to stay," he said quietly. "This isn't her home." "But it could be," Nora said into his shoulder. "Couldn't it?" He didn't have an answer for that. Later that night, after the girls were asleep, Ethan sat on the porch again. It was becoming a habit, this need for quiet, for the openness of the dark sky and the distant hills. The door creaked, and Ayanna stepped out. She'd started doing this too, joining him in the silence. "You troubled," she said, sitting down. "Just thinking." "About what?" He considered lying, then decided against it. "About you. About what happens next." She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "You want me to leave?" "No, that's not—" He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know what I want." "I leave if you want," she said quietly. "I not want to make trouble." "You're not making trouble." "You sure?" She gestured toward the darkness beyond the porch. "That man in town. He angry. Others will be too. Let them be angry. You have daughters. You must think about them." "I am thinking about them," Ethan said, his voice rough. "They've been living in a tomb for 3 years, and now they're laughing again, eating again. Nora asked me today if you could stay." Ayanna went very still. "She did?" "Yeah." "What you tell her?" "I told her I didn't know if you wanted to." Ayanna was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "I have nowhere else to go." The admission hung between them, raw and honest. "Then stay," Ethan said. She looked at him, her eyes searching his face in the dim light. "You sure?" "I'm sure." She nodded slowly, then stood. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night." He watched her go inside, then sat there a while longer, wondering what the hell he was doing. The next few weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Ayanna settled into the household with quiet determination, taking on tasks without being asked. She cooked, cleaned, mended, tended the garden. She helped Lily with her reading and sat with Nora during the long afternoons when the girl grew quiet and withdrawn. Ethan found himself watching her more than he should, the way she moved through the house like water, filling spaces he hadn't realized were empty. The way she spoke to the girls with a patience he'd lost somewhere along the way. The way she looked at him sometimes, like she was trying to figure out a puzzle. One afternoon, he came in from the fields to find her struggling with the pump outside. The handle was stuck, and she was trying to force it, her face flushed with effort. "Here," he said, stepping up beside her. "Let me." He put his hands over hers on the handle and pulled. The pump gave a grinding screech and then released, water gushing out into the bucket. Ayanna stepped back, breathing hard. "Thank you." "That thing sticks sometimes. You just have to know how to sweet-talk it." She smiled. "You talk to Pump?" "I talk to everything out here. Horses, cows, fences. They don't talk back, which is a nice change." She laughed, a real laugh, bright and unexpected. The sound of it did something to him, loosened something he'd kept locked down. "You funny man," she said. "First time anyone's accused me of that." Their eyes met, and for a moment neither of them moved. Then Ayanna looked away, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "I should go," she said. "Dinner?" "Yeah." She picked up the bucket and walked back to the house, and Ethan stood there by the pump, feeling like he'd just stepped off a cliff. That night Thomas Merrick came calling. Ethan heard the horses before he saw them, 3 riders coming up the road in the last light of dusk. He stepped out onto the porch, his rifle within easy reach but not in his hands. Merrick dismounted first, flanked by 2 men Ethan recognized from town. One was a ranch hand named Dale, young and eager. The other was Carl Fisher, a hard-faced man who'd lost land to the Apache years back. "Evening, Cole," Merrick said, his tone deceptively friendly. "Merrick. Thought I'd come by, check on how things are going." "Things are fine." "That's so." Merrick glanced toward the house. "Heard you still got that squaw living here." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Her name is Ayanna, and yes, she's still here." "That's what we came to talk about." "Nothing to talk about." Merrick stepped closer, his eyes hard. "See, the thing is, folks are getting nervous. You harboring an Apache. It sends a message, makes people think maybe you're sympathetic to them." I'm sympathetic to anyone who needs help. Even if it puts your neighbors at risk? She's not a risk to anyone. Carl Fisher spat into the dirt. You don't know that. Could be a scout. Could be feeding information back to her people. Ethan's hand moved closer to the rifle. You're reaching, Fisher. Am I? 3 weeks ago, the Henderson place got raided. Livestock stolen, barn burned. You think that's a coincidence? The Hendersons are 40 miles south. That's got nothing to do with Ayanna. You sure about that? Merrick asked. Behind him, Ethan heard the door open. He didn't turn, but he knew Ayanna was there, listening. I want you off my property, Ethan said, his voice low and even. We're just trying to help you see reason, Cole. I see reason just fine. Now get out. Merrick studied him for a long moment, then shook his head. You're making a mistake. That's my mistake to make. The 3 men mounted up, but before they rode off, Merrick leaned down from his saddle. This isn't over. People are watching. And if something happens, if there's another raid, another attack, they're going to come looking for answers, and they're going to start here. Ethan didn't respond. He just stood there, watching them disappear into the gathering darkness. When he turned around, Ayanna was standing in the doorway, her face pale. I bring trouble, she said. I should go. No. Ethan, no, he repeated, stepping up onto the porch. You're not going anywhere. Those men are cowards. They're scared, and they're looking for someone to blame, that's all. But if they come back, then I'll deal with it. She looked up at him, her eyes full of worry. You not have to protect me. Yeah, he said. I do. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with something neither of them was ready to name. Inside, Lily was waiting, her eyes wide. What did they want, Papa? Nothing important. Are they coming back? I don't know, sweetheart, but if they do, you let me handle it. Nora appeared beside her sister, clutching a wooden doll. Are we in danger? Ethan knelt down and put a hand on each of their shoulders. No, you're safe, I promise. He wasn't sure if it was a promise he could keep, but he said it anyway, because that's what fathers did. That night, sleep didn't come easy. Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house creak and settle. He kept thinking about Merrick's words, about the fear in Ayanna's eyes, about the way his daughters had looked at him, needing reassurance he wasn't sure he had. Finally, he gave up and went to the kitchen for water. He was surprised to find Ayanna already there, sitting at the table with a candle burning low. Can't sleep? He asked. She shook her head. Too much thinking. Yeah, I know the feeling. He sat down across from her. The candlelight cast shadows across her face, making her look younger, more vulnerable. Tell me about your family, he said, if you want to. She was quiet for so long he thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she took a breath. My mother was healer, she said. She teach me plants, medicine. My father was hunter, good man, strong. She paused. They both dead now. I'm sorry. Soldiers came to our camp 3 years ago. They say we must leave, go to reservation. My father refused. He say this our land, our home. Her voice grew quieter. They kill him. And when my mother tried to stop them, they kill her too. Ethan felt something cold settle in his stomach. And you? I run, I hide, I live alone for a long time. She looked down at her hands. Then men find me. Not soldiers. Traitors. They think I am... She struggled for the word. They think I am thing to sell. Jesus. I fight. I escape. But they hurt me. And I run again until I cannot run anymore. She met his eyes. Until you find me. Ethan didn't know what to say. The things she'd survived, the violence she'd endured, it made his own grief feel small by comparison. I'm sorry, he said again, because there was nothing else. You saved my life, Ayanna said. You give me home. I owe you everything. You don't owe me anything. I do. She reached across the table and touched his hand just briefly. You good man, Ethan Cole, your wife. She lucky woman. The mention of Sarah should have hurt, but instead it just felt like a fact stated plainly. She was the good one, Ethan said. I was just trying to keep up. You keep up good, Ayanna said, and there was something in her voice that made him look at her more closely. She pulled her hand back and stood. "I go to bed now. Thank you for listening." "Any time." She paused at the doorway, looking back at him. "Ethan?" "Yeah?" "I'm glad you find me." "Me too." She disappeared into the hallway, and Ethan sat there in the candlelight, feeling the weight of everything shifting around him. The days grew hotter as summer settled in. The work on the ranch intensified, cattle to move, hay to cut, repairs that couldn't wait. Ethan was out from dawn until dusk, his body aching by the time he came home each night. But the house was different now. There was always food waiting, the girls clean and fed, the chaos of daily life somehow managed. Ayanna had taken over the running of the household with quiet efficiency, and Ethan didn't realize how much he'd been struggling until he stopped having to carry it alone. One evening, he came in to find the table set for 4, candles lit, and something that smelled incredible coming from the oven. "What's all this?" he asked. Lily grinned. "Ayanna's teaching us to cook." "She made rabbit stew," Nora added, actually smiling. Ayanna wiped her hands on her apron. "I find rabbit this morning in trap by creek." "You set a trap? Is okay?" "Yeah, it's—" He shook his head, surprised. "It's great. I didn't know you knew how." "My father teach me." She ladled stew into bowls. "I teach girls too. They should know how to live on land." They sat down to eat, and the stew was rich and savory, better than anything Ethan could have made. The girls ate eagerly, asking Ayanna questions about trapping, about tracking, about the things she'd learned growing up. Ethan watched the 3 of them together, something warm and uncomfortable settling in his chest. This felt like family, not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something new, something unexpected. After dinner, while Ayanna cleaned up, Ethan took the girls outside to watch the sunset. They sat on the porch steps, the sky turning pink and gold above the hills. "Papa," Lily said, leaning against his shoulder, "do you think Ayanna will stay forever?" "I don't know, honey. I want her to." "Me too," Nora said quietly. Ethan looked down at his daughters, their faces turned up toward the fading light. "Why?" "Because she's family now," Lily said, as if it were obvious. And maybe it was. Maybe family wasn't just about blood or vows or the past. Maybe it was about who showed up, who stayed, who made the house feel less empty. Later, when the girls were asleep, Ethan found Ayanna outside, standing by the garden, looking up at the stars. "They're beautiful tonight," he said, coming to stand beside her. "Yes." She glanced at him. "In my language, we have stories about stars. Each one is spirit of ancestor, watching over us." "That's a nice thought. You believe?" "I don't know what I believe anymore." She was quiet for a moment. "Your wife? She was good woman?" "The best. You miss her." "Every day." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. She gave me 3 good years and 2 beautiful daughters. I can't regret that." Ayanna nodded slowly. "You still have love for her?" "Always." "That good," she said. "Love not die. It just change." Ethan looked at her, struck by the simplicity of the words. "You're pretty wise for someone so young." She smiled. "I'm not so young. I just look young." "How old are you?" 23 summers." He blinked. He'd assumed she was older. "You've lived a lot in those years." "Too much, maybe." "Yeah, maybe." They stood there in comfortable silence, the night settling around them. Ethan felt something shift inside him, a loosening of the grief that had held him captive for so long. "Ayanna," he said, "thank you." "For what?" "For being here. For helping with the girls. For, He gestured vaguely. "Everything." She turned to face him fully. "You give me life, Ethan. I give you what I can. You've given us more than you know." She held his gaze for a long moment, and there was something in her eyes he couldn't quite read. Then she stepped back, breaking the moment. "I go inside now. Good night." "Good night." He watched her walk away, then stood there a while longer, looking up at the stars and wondering what Sarah would think of all this. Probably that he was an idiot for taking so long to see what was right in front of him. The next morning brought trouble. Ethan was in the barn when he heard horses approaching. Multiple riders, moving fast. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside to see a group of 6 men pulling up in front of the house. Merrick was there, along with Fisher and Dale. But there were 3 others too, men Ethan didn't recognize, all armed, all grim-faced. "Cole," Merrick said, dismounting, "we need to talk." "I thought we already did that." "The Henderson place got hit again last night, lost 10 head of cattle and a horse. And you think I had something to do with it?" "Not you, her." Merrick pointed toward the house. "That Apache woman you're hiding." Ethan's grip tightened on the rifle. "Ayanna was here all night, with me and my daughters." "So you say." "So I know." One of the strangers stepped forward, a lean man with a scar across his cheek. "We're forming a search party. Gonna track down whoever's been raiding and put a stop to it. We want to search your property." "The hell you do." "We got a right to protect our land." "You got no right to come onto my land with guns and accusations." "Then you got something to hide?" "I got nothing to hide, but I also got no patience for this vigilante bullshit." The man's expression hardened. "You're harboring an Apache. That makes you complicit." "She's one woman. She's not raiding anyone." "Then let us search." "No." The tension ratcheted up, hands moving toward guns. Ethan's finger found the trigger of his rifle. Then the door of the house opened and Ayanna stepped out. "Wait," she said, her voice clear and steady. "I come. You search." "No," Ethan said. "You don't have to. It's okay." She walked toward the men, her head held high. "I show you. I have nothing." Merrick nodded to 2 of the men. "Check the barn and the outbuildings." They moved past Ethan, and he forced himself not to stop them. Ayanna stood in the yard, watching, her face calm but her hands clenched at her sides. Lily and Nora appeared in the doorway, their eyes wide with fear. "Papa?" Lily called. "Stay inside," Ethan said. The search didn't take long. The men found nothing because there was nothing to find. When they came back empty-handed, the scarred man looked frustrated. "Satisfied?" Ethan asked. "For now," Merrick said. "But we're keeping an eye on this place, and if there's another raid, there won't be. Better not be." The men mounted up and rode off, leaving dust and tension in their wake. Ethan turned to Ayanna. She was shaking, he realized, though she was trying to hide it. "You all right?" he asked. "Yes." "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." She looked at him. "I not want them to hurt you." "They're not going to hurt anyone." "You not know that." He didn't. And that was the problem. Inside, the girls rushed to Ayanna, hugging her tightly. She held them close, murmuring words in Apache that Ethan didn't understand but could feel. That night, he couldn't shake the image of those men on his land, guns ready, eyes hard with suspicion and hate. This was going to get worse before it got better. He just didn't know how much worse. The unease didn't leave with the riders. It settled into the house like smoke, invisible but suffocating. Ethan watched Ayanna move through the days that followed with a new kind of wariness, her shoulders tight, her eyes checking the windows too often. The girls felt it too. Lily stopped chattering as much, and Nora retreated back into that quiet shell she'd only just started to crack. 3 days after the search, Ethan was fixing the gate near the road when he saw a single rider approaching. He recognized the horse before the man, a dappled gray that belonged to Joseph McKenna, the closest thing this territory had to a lawman. McKenna was older, somewhere past 50, with silver hair and a weathered face that had seen too much to be easily shocked. "Joe?" Ethan said as the man dismounted. "Ethan." McKenna tied his horse to the post and pulled off his gloves. "Got a minute? For you?" "Always." They walked a short distance from the house, McKenna's boots kicking up dust with each step. When they were out of earshot, he stopped and turned to face Ethan directly. "I'm going to be straight with you," McKenna said. "There's talk in town. Bad talk. About Ayanna. About you harboring her. Merrick's been making noise, and he's got people listening. Fisher, Dale, a few others. They're saying you're putting the whole territory at risk. That's horseshit, and you know it." "I do. But it doesn't matter what I know. It matters what they believe." McKenna pulled out a cigarette and lit it, taking a long drag. "There was another incident 2 nights ago. The Crawley place, about 15 miles northwest. Someone cut their fence, ran off a dozen cattle. No one saw who did it, but folks are jumpy. And they're blaming Ayanna." They're blaming anyone who's Apache, and anyone who shelters them. McKenna looked at him seriously. I'm not telling you what to do, Ethan, but I am telling you to be careful. These men, they're scared, and scared men do stupid things. I'm not sending her away. I didn't think you would. McKenna smiled faintly. You always were stubborn as a mule. Sarah used to complain about it. The mention of his wife stung, but not as sharply as it once had. She had plenty to complain about. We all do. McKenna took another drag, exhaling slowly. Just watch yourself. And keep that rifle close. Already am. After McKenna left, Ethan stood by the gate for a long time, staring at the road. He could feel the walls closing in, the pressure building. Part of him wondered if he was being selfish, keeping Ayanna here when it put his daughters at risk. But another part, a part that was growing stronger, couldn't imagine the house without her anymore. When he went inside, he found Ayanna in the kitchen, teaching Lily how to make cornbread. Nora sat at the table, watching with quiet attention. Smells good, Ethan said, hanging his hat. It's almost ready, Lily announced. I did the mixing all by myself. Did you now? Well, Ayanna helped a little. Ayanna smiled, but Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders. He waited until after dinner, after the girls had gone to bed, before he brought it up. They were on the porch again, their usual spot now, the place where hard conversations happened. McKenna came by today, Ethan said. Ayanna's hands stilled on the mending she'd been working on. What'd he say? That people are scared, that there's been more raids, that I should be careful. He right. I know. She set down the shirt she'd been fixing and looked at him. You want me to leave? No, that's not what I'm saying. Then what? I'm saying things might get harder, and I need you to know that I'm not going to let anything happen to you, no matter what. Ayanna shook her head slowly. You cannot promise that. I just did. Ethan, listen to me. He leaned forward, his voice low and intense. I've lost enough. I'm not losing this too. This? He gestured vaguely toward the house, toward her, toward everything. This, whatever this is, the girls need you, and I... He stopped, the words catching in his throat. You what? She asked softly. He couldn't say it, not yet, so he just shook his head and looked away. Ayanna was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and touched his hand, her fingers warm against his skin. I stay, she said, as long as you let me. Good. They sat there in the darkness, her hand still on his, and for the first time in a long time, Ethan didn't feel so alone. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Ethan was in the barn when he heard a wagon rolling up the drive. He stepped out to see a woman climbing down, tall, angular, dressed in a severe black dress with her hair pulled back in a tight bun. He recognized her immediately. Margaret Pruitt, the schoolteacher from town. Mrs. Pruitt, he said, walking over. What brings you out here? Mr. Cole? Her voice was clipped, formal. I've come to discuss your daughters. What about them? They haven't been attending school. Ethan felt a flush of guilt. He'd been so wrapped up in everything else that he'd let their education slide. It's been a difficult few months. I understand you've had challenges. Nevertheless, the girls need proper instruction. Lily is bright, and Nora requires special attention given her circumstances. Her circumstances? Her silence. Her withdrawal. A proper educational environment might help. Ethan bristled at the implication. She's doing fine here. Is she? Mrs. Pruitt's gaze moved past him to the house, where Ayanna had appeared in the doorway. Her expression hardened. I see. Whatever you're thinking, don't. I'm thinking that those girls need stability, structure, not... She gestured vaguely toward Ayanna. Whatever arrangement you've created here. That arrangement is none of your concern. It is when it affects the children. Mrs. Pruitt drew herself up. I'll expect to see them in school by Monday, Mr. Cole. If they don't attend, I'll have no choice but to report the situation to the territorial authorities. Report what situation? An unstable home environment, unsuitable influences, neglect. The word hit him like a punch. I'm not neglecting my daughters. Then prove it. Send them to school. She climbed back into her wagon. Monday, Mr. Cole, don't disappoint me. She drove off, leaving Ethan standing in the dust, anger and worry churning in his gut. Ayanna walked over, her face troubled. What's she want? The girls. She wants them back in school. That good, yes? They should learn. Not if it means... He stopped, frustrated. She threatened to report me. Said the home environment was unstable. Because of me. Yeah. Ayanna's expression closed off. Then maybe I should... Don't. Don't even think about it. He turned to face her fully. We'll figure this out, together. But as the day wore on, he couldn't shake Mrs. Pruitt's words. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was being selfish, letting his feelings cloud his judgment. The girls did need education, structure, normalcy. That night, he talked to Lily and Nora about going back to school. I don't want to, Lily said immediately. Why not? Because what if something happens while we're gone? What if those men come back? Nothing's going to happen. You don't know that. Nora had been silent throughout the conversation, but now she spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. Will Ayanna still be here when we get home? Of course she will. Promise? Ethan looked at his youngest daughter, seeing the fear in her eyes. I promise. Monday came too fast. Ethan loaded the girls into the wagon and drove them to town, Ayanna standing on the porch watching them go. The ride was quiet, both Lily and Nora staring out at the passing landscape with worried faces. The school was a small wooden building on the edge of town, surrounded by a handful of other children already playing in the yard. Mrs. Pruitt stood at the door, her expression stern. Mr. Cole, she said as they approached, I'm pleased to see you've made the right decision. Just take care of them, he said. Of course. She looked at the girls. Come along, ladies. We have much to catch up on. Lily glanced back at Ethan, her eyes pleading, but he just nodded, trying to look reassuring. I'll be back to pick you up this afternoon, he said. Be good. He watched them disappear inside, then climb back into the wagon. As he drove through town, he could feel eyes on him, people staring, whispering. Word had spread. Everyone knew about Ayanna now. At the general store, the owner, a portly man named Hargrove, barely acknowledged him. When Ethan asked for flour and sugar, Hargrove moved slowly, deliberately, making him wait. That'll be $8, Hargrove said when he finally loaded the supplies. 8? That's twice what I paid last month. Prices went up. For everyone or just for me? Hargrove didn't answer, just held out his hand. Ethan paid and left, his anger simmering. This was how it started, the quiet ostracism, the small cruelties. He'd seen it before, back when homesteaders first started settling the territory. People who didn't fit in, who made waves, who challenged the accepted order. They got pushed out, one small indignity at a time. He wouldn't let that happen. Not to him and not to Ayanna. When he got back to the ranch, she was in the garden, kneeling in the dirt, pulling weeds. She looked up as he approached, her face brightening. How was it? She asked. Fine. They're in school. Mrs. Pruitt will make sure they learn. Good. He sat down on the edge of the garden bed, watching her work. You don't have to do this, it's hot, and I like it, she said. Working with earth. It feels... She searched for the word. Honest. Yeah, I know what you mean. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, Ayanna pulling weeds and Ethan checking the irrigation channels he'd dug. The sun climbed higher, beating down on them, but neither complained. Ethan, Ayanna said eventually, can I ask you something? Sure. Why you do this? Keep me here when it make everything harder? He considered the question, turning it over in his mind. Because it's the right thing to do. Just that? No. He met her eyes. Not just that. Then what else? He wanted to tell her. Wanted to say that somewhere along the way she'd become more than just someone he was helping. That he looked forward to seeing her in the morning, to hearing her voice, to the way she smiled when Lily said something ridiculous. That the house felt alive again in a way it hadn't since Sarah died. But the words wouldn't come. So he just shrugged and said, You make good cornbread. She laughed, and the sound of it eased something in his chest. That afternoon, when he went to pick up the girls, Mrs. Pruitt stopped him at the door. A word, Mr. Cole. He followed her inside, where the classroom was empty except for Lily and Nora, gathering their things. "How were they?" he asked. "Lily did well. She's quite advanced in her reading." Mrs. Pruitt paused. "Nora, however, remains a concern. She didn't speak once during the entire day. Not to me, not to the other children. She just sat there staring. She's shy." "It's more than shyness. That child is deeply troubled, and I believe the environment at home is contributing to it." Ethan's jaw tightened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that perhaps Nora would benefit from a more structured setting. There are institutions." "No." "Mr. Cole." "I said no. She stays with me." Mrs. Pruitt's expression hardened. "Then I hope you know what you're doing, because that girl needs help, and if you can't provide it, I can. We're doing just fine." "Are you?" She glanced toward Lily and Nora. "I wonder." On the ride home, Lily chattered about her day, but Nora remained silent, staring out at the landscape. Ethan kept glancing at her, worried. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked. She nodded, but didn't speak. That night, after dinner, Nora came to Ayanna in the kitchen. "Can you teach me words?" she asked quietly. Ayanna looked surprised. "In my language?" "Yes." "Why?" Nora shrugged. "I want to know them." Ayanna smiled and knelt down to the girl's level. "Okay, what you want to learn? How do you say mother?" The question hung in the air. Ayanna glanced at Ethan, who stood frozen in the doorway. "Shema," Ayanna said softly. "It means mother." "Shema," Nora repeated carefully. "Good, very good." Nora hesitated, then wrapped her arms around Ayanna's neck, hugging her tightly. Ayanna closed her eyes, holding the girl close. Ethan turned away, something breaking open inside him. Later, after the girls were asleep, he found Ayanna on the porch again. "She's getting attached to you," he said. "I know." "That scare you?" "Yes." Ayanna looked at him. "Does it scare you?" "Yeah." "Why?" "Because I don't know what happens if you leave. I don't know how to explain that to them." "I not leave," Ayanna said. "I tell you this. You might not have a choice. If things get bad enough, then we face it together." She stood and walked over to him, standing close enough that he could smell the sage she used in her hair. "You're not alone, Ethan. Not anymore." He looked down at her, at the determination in her eyes, the strength in her small frame, and before he could stop himself, before he could think too hard about it, he reached out and pulled her into his arms. She stiffened for a moment, then relaxed, her hands coming up to rest against his chest. They stood there holding each other in the darkness, and Ethan felt something shift, something fundamental and irreversible. "I can't lose you," he said quietly. "You won't. You don't know that. I know I fight for this. For you, for girls, for this home. I fight." He pulled back just enough to look at her face. "Why?" "Because for first time in long time, I have reason to." The words settled between them, honest and raw, and when Ayanna rose up on her toes and pressed her lips to his, soft and tentative, Ethan didn't pull away. He kissed her back, slow and careful, like he was afraid she might disappear if he held on too tight. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. "I shouldn't have," Ayanna started. "Don't," Ethan said. Don't apologize." "But Sarah's gone, and I think she'd want me to live. Not just survive, but actually live." Ayanna nodded slowly. "Okay. Okay." They stood there for a moment longer. Then Ayanna stepped back, her cheeks flushed. "I go to bed now," she said. "All right. Good night, Ethan." "Good night." He watched her disappear inside, then sank down onto the porch steps, his hands shaking. What the hell was he doing? Getting involved with Ayanna, letting his daughters get attached, it was reckless, dangerous, maybe even selfish, but it also felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. The following days were both easier and harder. Easier because there was an honesty between them now, an acknowledgement of what was growing. Harder because the outside pressure kept building. At school, Lily came home with a black eye. When Ethan demanded to know what happened, she told him that another boy, Dale's son, Tommy, had called Ayanna a savage and said she didn't belong. Lily had punched him. "I'm not sorry," she said. her chin raised defiantly. He deserved it. Ethan didn't know whether to be proud or worried. He settled on both. Mrs. Pruitt sent a note home saying that Lily had been disruptive and that any further incidents would result in suspension. Ethan read it, crumpled it up, and threw it in the fire. That weekend, he took the girls into town for supplies. As they walked down the main street, people openly stared. A group of women crossed to the other side of the road rather than pass them. In the store, Hargrove refused to serve them at all. "You're not welcome here anymore," the man said flatly. "What? You heard me. Get out. I have money. I don't care. We don't serve Indian lovers." Lily gasped. Nora grabbed Ethan's hand, her eyes wide. Ethan felt rage boil up inside him, hot and sharp, but he forced it down, forced himself to stay calm for the girls' sake. "Come on," he said quietly. "We'll go somewhere else." But there was nowhere else. Every store, every business, they were all closed to him now. They drove back to the ranch in silence. When they arrived, Ayanna took one look at their faces and knew. "What happened?" she asked. "Town's turned on us," Ethan said. "No one will sell to us anymore." "Because of me." "Because they're cowards." Ayanna looked stricken. "I bring this on you. On girls. I should—" "Don't you dare say it," Ethan said fiercely. "Don't you dare talk about leaving." "But the girls are fine. We're fine. We have enough supplies to last a while, and I can hunt, trap, grow what we need. We don't need them." "Ethan, we don't need them," he repeated. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't entirely true. They could survive on their own for a while, but not indefinitely. And if the town stayed turned against them, if the isolation continued, eventually something would have to give. That night, after the girls were asleep, Ayanna came to him. "I've been thinking," she said. "About what?" "About how to fix this." "There's nothing to fix. We just wait it out. People will calm down eventually." "No, they won't." She sat down across from him. "Fear like this, it grow. It get worse. And then—" She made a sharp gesture. "Violence. I won't let it come to that." "You cannot stop it alone." "Then what do you suggest?" Ayanna took a breath. "I go to town. I talk to people. I show them I'm not threat." "Absolutely not." "Ethan, no, you go into town and someone might hurt you. Or worse. If I not try, they hurt you. They hurt girls. We'll find another way." "What way?" He didn't have an answer. Ayanna stood and walked to the window, looking out at the dark landscape. "I tell you before, I fight for this, for family. But I not know how to fight people who hate without knowing." "You don't fight them. You just outlast them." She turned to look at him. "You really believe that?" He wanted to. But the truth was, he didn't know what he believed anymore. The next morning, Ethan was working in the barn when he heard horses. A lot of them. He grabbed his rifle and stepped outside to see at least a dozen riders coming up the road, led by Thomas Merrick. His blood ran cold. "Stay inside," he called to Ayanna, who was at the house. Then he walked out to meet the riders, his rifle held ready. Merrick pulled up short, the others fanning out behind him. They were all armed, shotguns, rifles, pistols. This wasn't a friendly visit. "Cole," Merrick said, "we need to talk." "Then talk, but keep your distance." "There was a raid last night, the Patterson place. Whole family barely made it out alive, house burned to the ground." Ethan's stomach sank. "And you think—" "We think it's connected. All these raids, they started around the time that Squaw showed up here. Her name is Ayanna, and she had nothing to do with any raids." "You don't know that." "I do know it. She's been here, with me, every single night." "Then maybe she's signaling them somehow, passing information." "You're reaching," Fisher urged his horse forward. "We're done asking nice, Cole. Hand her over." "No." "This isn't a request." Ethan raised his rifle, pointing it at Fisher's chest. "And this isn't a negotiation. Get off my land." The tension exploded. Every man there raised their weapon. All of them pointed at Ethan. He was outnumbered, outgunned. If they decided to rush him, he'd be dead in seconds. But he didn't lower his rifle. "You want to die for her?" Merrick asked. "If that's what it takes?" "You're a fool." "Maybe. but I'm a fool with a loaded rifle and a clear shot. So why don't you all just turn around and ride back to town? For a long, terrible moment, nobody moved. Then the door of the house opened, and Ayanna stepped out. No, Ethan said. Get back inside. But she didn't listen. She walked past him, out into the open, and stood facing the riders. You want me? She said, her voice steady. Then take me, but leave him alone. Leave girls alone. Ayanna. It okay, Ethan? She looked at Merrick. I go with you. No fight, no blood. Just let them be. Merrick studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, get on a horse. Like hell, Ethan said, stepping in front of her. She's not going anywhere. Ethan, please. No. He turned to Merrick. You want to take her? You'll have to go through me. Fisher laughed. That can be arranged. Ethan's finger tightened on the trigger. This was it. This was where everything ended, in violence and blood and stupidity. Then a voice called out from behind the riders. Hold on there. Everyone turned to see Joseph McKenna riding up, his hand resting on his pistol. Joe, Merrick said, his tone wary, this doesn't concern you. The hell it doesn't. I'm the law in these parts, and you're forming a lynch mob. That concerns me plenty. We're protecting our land. By threatening an unarmed woman, that's not protection, Thomas. That's cowardice. Fisher spat. She's Apache. She's probably working with the raiders. You got proof of that? The timing isn't proof. It's speculation. McKenna rode closer, his eyes hard. Now I'm going to give you all one chance to turn around and head back to town. Otherwise, I start arresting people for attempted assault. You can't arrest all of us, Dale said. Maybe not, but I can arrest you. McKenna pointed at the young man. And you, he pointed at Fisher. And you, he pointed at Merrick. After that, the rest of you might start thinking twice about what you're doing here. The riders shifted uncomfortably. McKenna's presence had changed the dynamic, thrown doubt into the group. Finally, Merrick lowered his gun. This isn't over, Cole. Yeah, it is, McKenna said. Now get. Slowly, reluctantly, the riders turned their horses and rode away. When they were gone, McKenna dismounted and walked over to Ethan. You all right? He asked. Yeah, thanks. Don't thank me. Thank whatever luck kept them from doing something stupid. He looked at Ayanna. Ma'am. She nodded, her face pale. McKenna turned back to Ethan. This is getting out of hand. You need to be careful. I know. No, I don't think you do. Those men, they're scared and angry, and that's a dangerous combination. Next time, I might not get here in time. What am I supposed to do? Send her away? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, McKenna sighed. I'm saying maybe it's time to think about leaving. All of you. Go somewhere fresh where nobody knows your business. This is my land. My home. And it'll still be here. But will you? The question lingered after McKenna left. Ethan stood in the yard staring at the dust the riders had kicked up, and for the first time he seriously considered it. Maybe McKenna was right. Maybe the only way to keep everyone safe was to leave. Start over somewhere else, somewhere they could just be a family without all this hate and fear. But the thought of abandoning the ranch, the land Sarah had loved, the home they'd built together, felt like betrayal. Ayanna touched his arm gently. You thinking about what he say? Yeah. You want to leave? I don't know what I want anymore. She nodded slowly. We go inside. Talk about it. Inside, Lily and Nora were hiding in the bedroom, their faces pale. Ethan gathered them both in his arms, holding them close. It's okay, he said. Everyone's gone. You're safe. I don't feel safe, Lily whispered. I know, baby. I know. That night, sleep was impossible. Ethan lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. Every option seemed wrong. Staying put them in danger. Leaving meant giving up everything. Around midnight, he heard his door creak open. He sat up to find Ayanna standing there, silhouetted in the moonlight. Can't sleep? He asked. No. She hesitated. Can I stay here just to talk? Yeah, of course. She came in and sat on the edge of his bed, her hands folded in her lap. For a while, neither of them spoke. I'm sorry, she said finally. For what? For bringing all this on you. You didn't bring anything. These people, their hate was already there. You just gave them an excuse. Still, if I'm not here, if you weren't here, my daughters would still be living in silence. I'd still be barely holding on. This house would still feel like a tomb. He reached over and took her hand. You saved us, Ayanna, not the other way around. She looked at him, her eyes shining. You really believe that? I do. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and slow. And this time there was no hesitation, no pulling back. They fell into each other, holding on like they were drowning, and the other was the only solid thing in the world. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ayanna rested her forehead against his. What we do? She whispered. I don't know, Ethan admitted, but whatever it is, we do it together. Together, she repeated. And for now, that was enough. Morning came too soon, bringing with it a reality that felt heavier than the night before. Ethan woke to find Ayanna gone from his room, though the warmth of where she'd been still lingered. He dressed quickly, splashed water on his face, and went to find the girls already at the breakfast table, unusually quiet. Lily picked at her eggs without eating. Nora hadn't touched her plate at all. Not hungry? Ethan asked, trying to sound normal. Those men yesterday, Lily said, not looking up. They wanted to take Ayanna away. But they didn't. But they wanted to, and they might come back. Ethan sat down heavily. Yeah, they might. So what do we do? It was the question he'd been asking himself all night. Before he could answer, Ayanna came in from outside, carrying a basket of eggs from the hen house. She set them on the counter and turned to face them all. I have idea, she said. What kind of idea? Ethan asked warily. I go to town. I talk to people. I show them I am not enemy. We already discussed this. It's too dangerous. More dangerous to hide. Fear grow when people not know. If they see me, talk to me, maybe fear become less. Or maybe they hurt you. Maybe. But I must try. She looked at the girls, then back at Ethan. I not let this family break because people afraid. I fight different way. With words, not weapons. Lily spoke up quietly. I think she should try. Ethan turned to his daughter, surprised. What? Mrs. Pruitt says fear comes from ignorance. If people met Ayanna, really met her, they'd see she's not scary. She's just Ayanna. Out of the mouths of babes, Ayanna said softly. You're both crazy, Ethan muttered. But he could see the determination in Ayanna's eyes, the same look she'd had when she'd walked out to face Merrick and his men. She was going to do this whether he agreed or not. Fine, he said finally, but I'm coming with you, and we bring the rifle. No rifle. That make worse. Then I'll keep it in the wagon, but I'm not letting you go alone. She nodded, accepting the compromise. They left after breakfast, the wagon rolling slowly down the dusty road toward town. The girls stayed behind. Ethan didn't want them anywhere near whatever might happen. He'd asked Mrs. Patterson's sister, Elena, who lived a few miles south and hadn't turned against them yet, to come watch them. She'd arrived just as they were leaving, a sturdy woman with kind eyes who asked no questions. The ride to town was tense. Ayanna sat beside him, her back straight, her hands folded calmly in her lap. But Ethan could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her eyes scanned the horizon. You scared? He asked. Yes. Good. Fear keeps you sharp. You scared too? Terrified. She reached over and took his hand, squeezing it briefly before letting go. The simple gesture steadied him. When they reached town, it was late morning. The main street was moderately busy. People going about their business, wagons being loaded, children playing near the church. The moment Ethan's wagon appeared, everything stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. People turned to stare. Someone called out, and within moments, a crowd began to gather. Ethan pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the general store and climbed down. He turned to help Ayanna, but she was already on the ground, standing tall despite being a full head shorter than most of the men now surrounding them. What's she doing here? Someone called out. We came to talk, Ethan said, his voice carrying. Just talk. Thomas Merrick pushed through the crowd, his face dark with anger. You got some nerve, Cole. I've got nothing but nerve lately, Ethan said. Now let the lady speak. Ayanna stepped forward. For a moment, she just looked at the crowd. Dozens of faces, some hostile, some merely curious, all wary. "My name is Ayana," she said, her English careful but clear. "I know you afraid. I know you think I bring danger, but I not raider, I not scout. I am woman who nearly die, and this man," she gestured to Ethan, "he saved my life. He give me home when I have nothing. He give me family." "That's real touching," Fisher called out. "But what about the raids?" "I'm not part of raids. I've been at ranch every night. Ask him. He'd say anything to protect you." Ayana shook her head. "You're right to be afraid. Bad things happen. People hurt. People die. But I not enemy. My family, my mother, my father, they killed by soldiers 3 years ago. I run. I hide. I survive alone until those men find me and hurt me and leave me to die. I have no people left, no tribe. Just me." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Pruitt had emerged from somewhere, standing near the front with her arms crossed. "If what you say is true," the schoolteacher said, "then why should we believe you? You're still Apache. Your people have killed ours." "And your people kill mine," Ayana said, her voice steady but sad. "This is truth. Blood for blood. Anger for anger. But I just one woman. I not carry all that hate. I just want to live. To help family who take me in. To maybe have peace." "Peace," Merrick scoffed. "There's no peace with your kind." "My kind?" Ayana's voice sharpened. "What is my kind? I am person. I cook. I clean. I work with hands. I laugh with children. I cry when sad. How different is that from you?" The question hung in the air. Ethan watched the crowd, saw some faces soften, others harden further. Then a woman stepped forward, someone Ethan didn't recognize, older, with gray hair and weathered hands. "I lost my son to Apache raiders 5 years ago," she said quietly. "They burned our homestead, took everything." The crowd murmured. Ayana stood very still. "I hated them for it," the woman continued. "Still do, some days. But looking at you," she paused, "you're just a girl, younger than my son was when he died, and you look scared." "I am scared," Ayana admitted. "Maybe you should be. Maybe we all should be." The woman looked around at the others. "But I don't see how hurting this one girl fixes anything. Doesn't bring my boy back. Doesn't make us safer. Just makes us cruel." "Ruth," Merrick said, his tone warning. "Don't you Ruth me, Thomas Merrick. I've earned the right to speak my mind." She looked at Ayana again. "I'm not saying I trust you, but I'm willing to see what happens. If Cole vouches for you and you're willing to show yourself honest, well, maybe that's something." A few people nodded. Others looked away, uncomfortable. Then Dale's son Tommy pushed forward, the same boy who'd given Lily a black eye. "My pa says you're signaling the raiders, showing them where to hit." "Your pa is wrong," Ayana said. "Prove it." "How I prove what I not do?" The boy had no answer for that. Ethan stepped forward. "Listen to me, all of you. I know you're scared. I know you want someone to blame, but Ayana isn't your enemy. She's a victim, same as anyone who's lost something to this violence. And if we turn on her, if we drive her out, or worse, then we're no better than the people we're afraid of." "Easy for you to say," Fisher called out. "You're not the one who lost everything." "The hell I'm not," Ethan shot back. "I lost my wife 3 years ago. My daughters lost their mother. This ranch, this life, it's built on loss. But that doesn't give me the right to take it out on someone innocent. She's Apache. She's a person. And until you can prove she's done something wrong, actually prove it, not just suspect it, you have no right to threaten her." The argument might have continued, but Mrs. Pruitt raised her hand. "Enough. This is getting us nowhere." She looked at Ayana. "You say you want to prove yourself. Fine. Come help at the school." Everyone went silent. "What?" Merrick said. "If she's willing to work, to contribute, to show herself openly, then let her. I need help with the younger children, especially with their reading. If she's willing to come to town twice a week and assist, then people can see for themselves what kind of person she is." Ayana blinked, clearly surprised. "You want me to teach?" "I want you to help. There's a difference. But yes." Ethan started to object, but Ayana spoke first. "I do it." "Ayana's—" "I do it," she repeated, looking at him. This is how I fight. This is how I show them. Mrs. Pruitt nodded crisply. Fine. You'll start Monday, 9 o'clock. Don't be late. The crowd began to disperse, people talking in low voices, clearly divided on what had just happened. Merrick lingered, his expression dark. This isn't over, he said to Ethan. Yeah, you keep saying that, starting to sound like a broken record. Merrick rode off, and gradually the street returned to its normal rhythm. Ethan helped Ayanna back into the wagon, his hands shaking slightly with leftover adrenaline. That was either very brave or very stupid, he said as they drove out of town. Maybe both. You don't have to do this. Teaching at the school, putting yourself in town twice a week. Yes, I do. You see their faces. Some still hate, but some think different now. That woman, Ruth, she give me chance. I must take it. What if someone tries to hurt you? Then you come get me with rifle. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm not doing this because I want to, Ethan. I'm doing it because I must. For girls. For you. For us. He wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. This was the only way forward, not through hiding or fighting, but through showing the town that their fears were unfounded. It didn't make it any less terrifying. When they got back to the ranch, Elena was on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching the girls play near the barn. She stood as they approached. Everything all right? She asked. For now, Ethan said. Thanks for watching them. Anytime. Elena looked at Ayanna with something like sympathy. You're braver than I'd be going into that lion's den. Not brave, just desperate. Sometimes they're the same thing. After Elena left, Lily and Nora ran over, full of questions. Ayanna told them about Mrs. Pruitt's offer, and Lily's face lit up. You're going to be at school with us? Helping, yes, not teaching, but I be there. That's perfect. Lily grabbed her sister's hands. Did you hear that, Nora? Ayanna's going to be at school. For the first time in days, Nora smiled. It was small, tentative, but real. That night, after the girls were asleep, Ethan and Ayanna sat on the porch, as had become their habit. The sky was clear, stars scattered across it like thrown salt. You think it will work? Ayanna asked. Going to school, showing myself? I don't know. People are stubborn. Fear makes them more so. But some change. That woman, Ruth, she lose son, but she still give chance. Some people are stronger than others. Ayanna leaned her head against his shoulder. I scared, Ethan. I not show it in town, but I am. I know. What if I fail? What if I make things worse? Then we deal with it, together. She tilted her head to look up at him. You always say that, together. Because it's true. I'm not used to this. Having someone to stand with. I alone so long, I forget what it feel like. Ethan turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. You're not alone anymore. You understand that? Whatever happens, you're part of this family now. The girls love you, and I... He stopped, the words catching. You what? She asked softly. I care about you, more than I probably should, more than I know what to do with. That not sound like bad thing. It's not. It's just complicated. Sarah's only been gone 3 years. Sometimes it feels like I'm betraying her by feeling this way about you. Love not betray, Ayanna said. Love is gift. She give you 3 good years, you say, 2 beautiful daughters. That love not go away because you find new love. It just, how you say, make room. Make room, Ethan repeated. The words felt true in a way he hadn't expected. She leaned in and kissed him, gentle and sure. He kissed her back, and for a moment the fear and uncertainty faded into something simpler, something honest. When they pulled apart, Ayanna smiled. We be okay, all of us. You sound pretty sure of that. I have to be. If I not believe, then what we fighting for? Monday came too fast. Ethan drove Ayanna and the girls into town, the wagon rolling through morning mist that hung low over the fields. Lily chattered nervously, excited and worried in equal measure. Nora sat quietly, holding Ayanna's hand. When they reached the school, Mrs. Pruitt was already there, ringing the bell to call the children inside. She nodded curtly as Ayanna approached. You'll work with the younger students, the teacher said without preamble. Reading primers, basic arithmetic. I'll supervise, of course. Of course, Ayana agreed. Inside, the children stared openly. Some whispered. Tommy Dale glared from his seat near the back, but his father wasn't there to egg him on. Ayana moved to the front of the room with quiet dignity. Mrs. Pruitt introduced her simply as Miss Ayana, who will be assisting with lessons. No mention of her being Apache. No explanation. Just a fact. The morning passed slowly. Ayana worked with a group of 6 young children, helping them sound out words, praising their efforts. Ethan watched through the window for a while, then forced himself to leave and handle business in town. Hargrove's store was still closed to him, but he found a traveling merchant willing to sell him flour and coffee at only slightly inflated prices. Small victories. When he returned to the school at noon, he found Ayana in the yard, surrounded by several of the younger children. They were sitting in a circle, and she was teaching them a hand game, chanting something in Apache. The children giggled, trying to copy her movements. Mrs. Pruitt stood nearby, watching with an unreadable expression. "How's it going?" Ethan asked her. "Better than expected," the teacher admitted. "She's patient with them. More patient than I am, truthfully. She's good with children." "So I see." Mrs. Pruitt glanced at him. "I may have misjudged the situation, Mr. Cole. I'm not saying I fully understand it, or that I approve of all your choices. But that woman, she's not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone angry, bitter, resentful? But she's none of those things. She's just—" Mrs. Pruitt paused, searching for the word. "Kind." Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. "Yeah, she is." Over the next few weeks, a tentative routine developed. Twice a week, Ayana came to town with the girls, helped at the school, and slowly, painfully slowly, the atmosphere began to shift. Not everyone accepted her. Merrick and Fisher remained hostile, and there were still people who crossed the street rather than walk near her. But others warmed. Ruth, the woman who'd lost her son, brought Ayana a basket of preserves one day. Elena stopped by the ranch with fabric for a new dress. Even Mrs. Pruitt unbent enough to invite Ayana to tea, a stiff, formal affair that nonetheless represented progress. The girls thrived. Lily's black eye healed, and she made friends with some of the other children, ones whose parents were less rigid in their thinking. Nora remained quiet, but she smiled more, spoke more. One day she came home from school and announced that she'd read an entire book out loud in class. "I'm proud of you, sweetheart," Ethan said, pulling her into a hug. "Ayana helped me practice," Nora said. "She's a good teacher." "Yes, she is." But beneath the surface, tension still simmered. There had been no more raids, which helped Ayana's case, but it also meant the real culprits were still out there. And men like Merrick weren't the type to admit they'd been wrong. One evening, about a month after Ayana started at the school, Ethan was fixing a fence when he saw a rider approaching fast. He recognized McKenna's horse and felt his stomach drop. "Joe?" he called as the lawman pulled up. "What's wrong?" "Plenty." McKenna dismounted, his face grim. "There was an incident in town today, after school let out." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Ayana?" "She's fine. Shaken up, but fine. Your girls, too." "What happened?" Fisher and a couple of his friends cornered her outside the school, started saying things, threatening her. It might have gotten bad, but Mrs. Pruitt came out with a shotgun and ran them off. Ethan felt rage boil up inside him, hot and violent. "Where are they now?" "Gone. I put out a warrant, but they've likely headed south. They know they crossed a line." McKenna put a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "I brought Ayana and the girls back here. They're inside, but Ethan, this is getting worse, not better." "I know. Those men aren't going to stop, and next time Mrs. Pruitt might not be there." "So what do I do?" "What I told you before. Leave. Take your family and go somewhere safe. This is our home. And it'll be your grave if you're not careful." McKenna left, and Ethan walked slowly to the house. Inside, he found Ayana sitting at the table, a cup of tea in her hands. Her face was pale, but she seemed composed. Lily and Nora were with her, clearly upset. "Papa," Lily said when she saw him, "those men, they said horrible things." "I know, baby. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, but they scared Ayana." Ethan looked at Ayana, who met his eyes steadily. All right, she said. Mrs. Pruitt, she very brave. She stopped them. This is my fault, Ethan said. I should never have let you go to town. Not your fault is their fault. They choose hate. But I put you in danger. I put myself in danger. I choose to try, and I not regret it. She stood and walked over to him. Some people change, Ethan. I see it. Children at school, they not afraid anymore. They like me. Parents see this. Some of them change too. Not all, but some. Is some worth risking your life? Yes, because some become more, and more become most. This take time, but it work. He wanted to believe her, but the fear in his gut told him that time was something they might not have. That night, after the girls were asleep, Ayanna came to Ethan's room again. She didn't ask this time, just slipped in and closed the door behind her. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his head in his hands. You thinking about leaving, she said. It wasn't a question. Yeah. Where you want to go? I don't know. California, maybe. Somewhere we can start fresh. And ranch? I'd have to sell it, or just leave it. I don't know. Ayanna sat down beside him. This hard choice. Everything's a hard choice lately. You want my thought? Always. I think we not run. I think we stay. We fight. Not with guns, with life. We show them that hate not win. That family stronger than fear. That's a nice idea, but it might get us killed. Maybe. Or maybe it change everything. She took his hand. You tell me before. You not lose this. You not lose family. I believe you then. I believe you now. But you must believe too. Ethan looked at her, at the strength in her face, the determination in her eyes, and he realized something he should have seen long ago. She wasn't the one who needed saving, not anymore. She was the one holding them all together. Okay, he said quietly. We stay. You sure? No, but I'm sure about you, about us, about what we're building here. She smiled and leaned against him. Then we stay, and we keep building. They sat there in the darkness, holding each other, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt something like hope. The next day, Lily came to him with a question that stopped him cold. They were in the barn, and she'd been helping him muck out stalls, a chore she normally complained about but had been doing silently. Finally, she set down her shovel and looked at him. Papa, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you love Ayanna? The question hung in the air between them. Ethan set down his own shovel, buying time. Why do you ask? Because I see the way you look at her and the way she looks at you, and I want to know. Ethan took a breath. Yeah, I think I do. Good. Good? Yeah, because Nora and I, we've been talking, and we think... She paused, gathering courage. We think she should be our mother. Ethan felt like he'd been punched in the chest. What? Not replace Mama. Nobody could do that. But be our mother now, Ayanna. We want her to stay forever. Officially. Lily, I know it's a big thing to ask, but she loves us, Papa, and we love her, and you love her too, so why can't she be part of our family for real? Ethan didn't know what to say. The idea had been forming in his own mind, vague and uncertain, but hearing it from his daughter made it real in a way that terrified him. It's complicated, he said finally. Why? Because of Mama. Because of what people would say. Because you're scared, Lily said, and her perception cut right through him. Yeah, I'm scared. Of what? Of losing again. Of getting this wrong. Of... He stopped, unable to articulate all the fears swirling inside him. Lily walked over and took his hand. Mama wouldn't want you to be alone forever, Papa. She'd want you to be happy. And Ayanna makes you happy. She makes all of us happy. Out of the mouths of babes, he thought again. Let me think about it, he said. Okay, but don't think too long. Nora's going to ask her herself if you don't do something. That evening, at dinner, Nora proved Lily right. They were eating stew, Ayanna's recipe, rich and savory, when Nora set down her spoon and looked across the table. Ayanna, she said clearly, will you be our mother? The room went completely silent. Ayanna froze, her eyes wide. Ethan felt his heart hammering. Nora, he started, but she talked right over him. We already love you, and you love us, and Papa loves you too, even if he's too scared to say it. So why can't you just be our mother for real?" Ayana looked at Ethan, her face pale, clearly waiting for him to say something. The girls both watched him, their expressions hopeful and determined. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. What could he say? That they were right? That he'd been thinking about this for weeks but was too afraid to act? That the idea of marrying Ayana felt like both the most natural thing in the world and a betrayal of everything he'd built with Sarah? "This not simple question," Ayana said softly, her eyes still on Ethan. "This something your papa and I must talk about, alone, okay?" Lily and Nora exchanged glances but nodded. After dinner, after the dishes were cleared and the girls had reluctantly gone to bed, Ethan and Ayana stood in the kitchen, the silence heavy between them. "I not ask them to say that," Ayana said finally. "I know. But they write about how I feel." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She stepped closer. "I love them, Ethan, both of them, like they my own. And I love you. I try not to, because I know it's complicated, but I do. It is complicated." "I know. You have wife, you have memory, you have grief. I not try to replace any of that. You couldn't if you tried. She was everything." "I know, you tell me." Ayana took his hands. "But she gone, and you here, and I here, and those girls, they need mother, and I need family, so maybe it's not about replacing. Maybe it's just about continuing, living." Ethan looked down at her, at this woman who'd come into his life broken and bleeding and had somehow stitched them all back together without even meaning to. "If I asked you to marry me," he said slowly, "what would you say?" "I would say yes, but only if you ask because you want to, not because girls ask, not because you feel you must. Because you want to." "What if I don't know what I want?" "Then you think about it, and when you know, you tell me." She kissed him softly and went to her room, leaving him standing alone in the kitchen with the weight of the question pressing down on him. That night, Ethan lay in bed unable to sleep. He thought about Sarah, about the life they'd built together, about the promises they'd made. He thought about Ayana, about the way she'd fought to be part of this family, about the strength it took to stand in front of a hostile town and ask for a chance. He thought about his daughters, about Lily's directness and Nora's quiet hope. And slowly, painfully, he let go of the guilt. Sarah was gone, and nothing he did would bring her back. Holding on to grief wasn't loyalty, it was just fear. Fear of moving forward, fear of being happy again, fear of admitting that life continued even after loss. Ayana was right. It wasn't about replacing, it was about continuing. By the time dawn broke, he knew what he wanted to do. He just had to figure out how to do it. The morning after his sleepless night, Ethan found himself standing in Sarah's old sewing room, the room that had become Ayana's. She was already up, making breakfast, and the space was empty except for her few possessions: a bundle of clothes, the shawl she'd worn that first day, a small pouch that he knew contained seeds and dried herbs from her mother's teaching. He picked up the shawl, running his fingers over the worn fabric. It smelled faintly of sage, and something else he couldn't name, something that was just Ayana. He thought about the first time he'd seen her, broken and bleeding in the dust, and how far they'd all come since then. The door creaked behind him. He turned to find Ayana standing there, her hair loose around her shoulders, flour on her hands from the biscuits she was making. "You looking for something?" she asked. "Yeah, answers, I guess." She walked into the room and took the shawl from his hands, folding it carefully. "You find any?" "Maybe." He took a breath. "The girls asked you to be their mother." "They did." "And you said we needed to talk about it." "We do. So let's talk." He sat down on the edge of the bed, and she sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "I love Sarah. Still do, in a way. She gave me everything that mattered, this ranch, those girls, a reason to get up in the morning. When she died, I thought that was it, that I'd had my chance at happiness, and it was over." "But," Ayana prompted gently, "but then you showed up, and you were broken too and scared, and you had every reason to hate people like me." "But you didn't. You stayed. You helped. You made the girls laugh again. You made the house feel less like a tomb and more like a home." He looked at her directly. "You made me feel less dead." Ethan, let me finish. I know this is complicated. I know people will talk. Some of them already hate us for what we're doing. Getting married would just give them more ammunition. He took her hand. But I don't care anymore. Because the girls are right. You already are their mother in every way that counts. And I want to make it official. I want to stand up in front of whoever will witness it and say that you're my wife. That we're a family. Ayana's eyes were wet. You sure? You're not just doing this because girls ask? I'm doing it because I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore. Because when I think about the future, you're in every part of it. Because I love you, Ayana. Not the way I love Sarah. That was different. That was young and new and untested. This is something else. Something built on hardship and trust and choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. She was crying now, silent tears running down her face. I love you too, so much. But I scared. Of what? Of not being enough. Of not knowing how to be wife, be mother. Of people hating us so much they hurt girls to hurt us. Those are all real fears, valid ones. But we'll face them together, like we faced everything else. Ayana wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. You really want to marry me? Yeah, I really do. She smiled through her tears. Then yes. Yes, I marry you. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, and for a long moment they just stayed like that, two broken people who'd somehow found a way to be whole together. When they finally pulled apart, Ayana laughed shakily. The girl's going to be so happy. They're going to be insufferable about being right. Good. Let them be happy about something. They told Lily and Nora over breakfast. Ethan waited until everyone was seated, then cleared his throat. Your father has an announcement, he said, and both girls looked up with identical expressions of curiosity. I asked Ayana to marry me, he said, and she said yes. For a second, there was complete silence. Then Lily shrieked and launched herself at Ayana, hugging her so hard they both nearly fell off the bench. Nora was right behind her, and suddenly all three of them were crying and laughing and talking over each other. I knew it, Lily said. I knew you'd say yes. We're going to be a real family, Nora said, her voice full of wonder. We already real family, Ayana said, holding them both. This just make it official. Ethan watched them, his chest tight with emotion. This was right. Whatever came next, this moment right here was absolutely right. But telling the girls was the easy part. The hard part was figuring out how to actually get married. That afternoon, Ethan rode into town alone to talk to Joseph McKenna. He found the lawman in his small office, going through paperwork. Joe, Ethan said, I need your help. McKenna looked up. With what? I want to marry Ayana, and I need someone to perform the ceremony. McKenna set down his pen slowly. You're serious. Dead serious. You know what kind of reaction that's going to get. I don't care. You should. Merrick and his friends are already looking for an excuse to run you out. This is going to be like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Then let them charge. I'm done living my life based on what other people think. McKenna studied him for a long moment, then sighed. All right. I can perform the ceremony. It's within my authority as a territorial officer. But Ethan, are you sure about this? Once you do it, there's no going back. I'm sure. And Ayana? She understands what she's signing up for? Better than I do, probably. McKenna nodded slowly. Okay then. When do you want to do it? As soon as possible. This week, if we can. This week? McKenna raised an eyebrow. You're not wasting any time. I've wasted 3 years already. I'm done waiting. Fair enough. Come by Saturday morning. Bring witnesses. You'll need at least 2. I'll have the papers ready. Ethan stood to leave, then paused. Joe, thank you for everything, for having our backs when no one else would. Someone's got to stand for what's right. Might as well be me. On the ride home, Ethan felt lighter than he had in months. There was still danger, still opposition, still 100 things that could go wrong. But for the first time, he felt like they were moving forward instead of just surviving. When he told Ayana about Saturday, she looked both excited and terrified. 3 days, she said. That's so soon. Too soon? No, just fast. What if I'm not ready? Nobody's ever ready. We just do it anyway. She smiled. You always make things sound simple. That's because I'm a simple man. You not simple. You stubborn and brave and little bit crazy, but not simple. I'll take that as a compliment. The next 2 days were a whirlwind of preparation. Ayana worked on altering one of Sarah's old dresses, a simple blue cotton that fit her well enough with a few adjustments. Lily and Nora helped, chattering excitedly about the wedding, making plans for flowers and decorations. Ethan rode out to Elena's place to ask her to be a witness. She agreed immediately, her eyes bright with tears. I'm so happy for you, she said. You deserve this, Ethan. All of you do. Will people give you trouble for standing with us? Probably, but I've never been one to worry much about what people think. She grinned. Besides, if they want to boycott me too, they can make their own preserves. The day before the wedding, Mrs. Pruitt showed up at the ranch unannounced. Ethan saw her wagon coming and braced himself for another lecture. But when she climbed down, her expression was neutral, almost kind. Mrs. Pruitt, he said, what brings you out here? I heard about your plans. To marry Miss Ayana. Word travels fast. It does in a small town. She looked toward the house where Ayana had appeared in the doorway. I came to offer my services as a witness, if you'll have me. Ethan stared at her, genuinely shocked. You want to stand witness? I do. That woman has worked beside me for weeks now. She's patient with the children, dedicated to learning, respectful of our ways even when they're not her own. She's proven herself to me, Mr. Cole, and I believe she'll make you a good wife. Thank you. That means more than you know. Don't thank me yet. Half the town is furious about this. There's been talk of protest, of disruption. You should be prepared. We are. Mrs. Pruitt nodded crisply. Good. I'll see you tomorrow at McKenna's office, 9 o'clock sharp. After she left, Ayana came out, her face puzzled. What'd she want? To stand witness at our wedding. Ayana's eyes went wide. Really? Really? She changed her mind about me. Seems like it. Ayana shook her head wonderingly. Maybe they're hope after all. That night, neither of them could sleep. Ethan found Ayana on the porch again, staring out at the darkness. Nervous? He asked, sitting beside her. Very. You? Terrified. Good. So I'm not alone. She took his hand. You think we doing right thing? I think we're doing the only thing that makes sense. The girls need stability. We need each other. Everything else, the town, the danger, the complications, we'll figure it out as we go. What if we can't? Then we'll fail together. But at least we'll have tried. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I wish my mother could see this. She would like you, I think. Yeah? Yeah, she always says strong man is not one who fight. Strong man is one who choose to build when others choose to destroy. Your mother sounds wise. She was. I miss her. I know, I miss Sarah too, but I think they'd both want us to be happy, to live full lives, not half lives. You're right. Ayana sat up and looked at him. Tomorrow, when we marry, I want to say vows, real ones, not just words someone give us. What do you want to say? I want to promise to be good mother to your daughters, to honor memory of Sarah by loving them way she would have, to stand with you in hard times and good times, to build life together that worth living. Those are good vows. What you want to promise? Ethan thought about it. I want to promise to protect you, not just from danger, but from fear, to give you home that's safe, family that's real, to choose you every day, even when it's hard, to love you for who you are, not who I need you to be. Ayana's eyes were wet again. Those good vows, too. They sat there in the darkness, holding hands, and Ethan felt something settle inside him, a peace he hadn't felt since before Sarah died. This was right. Whatever came next, this choice was right. Saturday morning dawned clear and bright. Ethan woke early, his stomach churning with nerves. He dressed in his best shirt, the one Sarah had made for him years ago, and tried to tame his hair. In the kitchen, Lily and Nora were already up, unusually quiet. You ready, Papa? Lily asked. As ready as I'll ever be. Ayana's in her room getting ready. She won't let us see the dress yet. That's traditional, I think. Nora came over and hugged him. I'm glad you're marrying her. She makes you smile again. The simple observation hit him hard. Yeah, she does. They loaded into the wagon, Ethan and the girls in front, Ayanna riding in back so he wouldn't see her before the ceremony. The ride to town felt both too long and too short. As they got closer, Ethan could see people gathering on the street, more than usual for a Saturday morning. There's a lot of people, Lily said nervously. I see them. When they pulled up to McKenna's office, a crowd had formed. Some faces were curious, some hostile. Merrick was there, standing with Fisher and Dale and a handful of others. They didn't look happy. Ethan climbed down and helped the girls out. Elena was already there, standing by the door with Mrs. Pruitt. Both women looked determined. Then Ayanna stepped down from the wagon, and Ethan forgot about everything else. She wore Sarah's blue dress, altered to fit her smaller frame. Her hair was braided with wildflowers. Lily and Nora's contribution, he guessed. She looked beautiful and terrified and brave all at once. You look, he started, but words failed him. Like wife? She asked, smiling nervously. Like everything. A voice called out from the crowd. This is wrong, Cole. You can't marry a savage? Ethan turned to see who'd spoken, but the voice was lost in the murmur of agreement from others. Merrick stepped forward. This is your last chance to come to your senses. Send her away before you destroy what's left of your reputation. My reputation isn't worth a damn compared to her, Ethan said clearly, loud enough for everyone to hear. And I'm done letting fear and hate dictate my choices. I love this woman. My daughters love her, and we're getting married whether you approve or not. Then you're a traitor to your own kind. My own kind? Ethan laughed, but there was no humor in it. My own kind are the people who showed up when my wife was dying and helped me through it. The people who brought food when I couldn't cook and sat with my daughters when they cried. And you know what? Half of you weren't there. You were too busy with your own lives to care about mine. But Ayanna cared. She stayed. She helped. She loved us when we needed it most. So if standing with her makes me a traitor, then I guess that's what I am. The crowd stirred. Some people looked uncomfortable, others angry. Then Ruth, the woman who'd lost her son, pushed through. I'll stand witness too, she said, if you'll have me. Mrs. Pruitt smiled. The more the merrier. McKenna appeared in the doorway. Let's do this inside. The rest of you can watch from the street if you want, but I won't have this ceremony disrupted. Ethan took Ayanna's hand and led her inside, the girls following close behind. Elena, Mrs. Pruitt, and Ruth came in after them. McKenna closed the door, muffling the sound of the crowd outside. The office was small, barely big enough for all of them. McKenna stood behind his desk, a Bible in one hand and a legal document in the other. All right, he said. This won't be fancy, but it'll be legal. Ethan Cole, do you come here of your own free will to marry this woman? I do. Ayanna, McKenna paused. I'm sorry, I don't know your family name. Redfeather, she said softly. Ayanna Redfeather. Ayanna Redfeather, do you come here of your own free will to marry this man? I do. Do either of you have vows you wish to speak? Ethan nodded. He turned to face Ayanna fully, taking both her hands in his. I promise to stand with you, to build a life with you, to honor Sarah's memory by loving the daughters she gave me, and to honor you by giving you the family you lost. I promise to choose you every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. And I promise to love you, not just in spite of everything we've been through, but because of it. Ayanna was crying, but her voice was steady. I promise to be good mother to Lily and Nora, to love them like my own, to honor Sarah by caring for family she love. I promise to stand with you in hard times and good times, to build home that is safe and full of love, to choose you every day, and to never stop fighting for this family. She paused, then added in Apache, a string of words Ethan didn't understand but felt the weight of. What did you say? He asked softly. I say, until stars fall and earth sleep, I am yours. It old vow. From my people. McKenna cleared his throat. By the authority vested in me by the territorial government, I pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan, you may kiss your bride. Ethan pulled Ayanna close and kissed her, gentle and sure. The girls cheered. Elena and Ruth clapped. Even Mrs. Pruitt smiled. When they pulled apart, Ayana was laughing through her tears. We married. Yeah, we are. They signed the papers, Ayana making her mark since she couldn't write in English, Ethan signing his name with a hand that shook slightly. The witnesses signed as well, making it official. When they stepped outside, the crowd was still there, but the mood had shifted somehow. Some people were leaving, shaking their heads. Others looked uncertain. And a few, not many, but a few, were actually smiling. Merrick stood at the front, his face dark with anger. This isn't over, Cole. Yes, it is, Thomas, Ruth said firmly. Let it go. Your son died because of them. My son died in a raid, by men we never identified. This woman had nothing to do with it, and you know it. You're just looking for someone to blame. Ruth's voice softened. I know you're angry. I know you're scared. We all are. But taking it out on innocent people doesn't make us safer. It just makes us cruel. Merrick stared at her, his jaw working. Then he turned and stalked away, Fisher and Dale following. The crowd dispersed slowly, people heading back to their lives. Elena came over and hugged Ayana. Welcome to the family, officially. Thank you for standing with us. Wouldn't have missed it. Mrs. Pruitt approached more cautiously. I hope you'll continue helping at the school, Mrs. Cole. The name, Mrs. Cole, made Ayana's eyes go wide. I will, if you want me. I do. The children have grown quite fond of you. It would be a shame to disappoint them. As they climbed back into the wagon, Lily and Nora squeezed in beside Ayana, chattering excitedly. Can we call you Mama now? Nora asked. Ayana looked at Ethan, who nodded. If you want to, she said. I want to, Nora said firmly. Me too, Lily added. Then, yes, you call me Mama. The ride home was full of laughter and plans and relief. When they reached the ranch, Ethan helped everyone down and stood for a moment, looking at his family, his wife, his daughters, and felt something he hadn't felt in years, complete. That night, after a celebratory dinner and after the girls had finally gone to bed, Ethan and Ayana stood on the porch again. She was wearing the ring he'd given her, a simple silver band that had been his grandmother's, and turning it on her finger. You think we'd be okay? She asked. Really okay? I think we've got a fighting chance. Better than most. What about town? Merrick and others? Some of them will come around, some won't. But we've got people on our side now. Ruth, Elena, Mrs. Pruitt. That's more than we had before. And if they don't? If they keep hating? Ethan pulled her close. Then we keep living anyway. We keep building this family, this life. We show them that love is stronger than hate. That choosing each other is worth more than their approval. Ayana rested her head against his chest. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it's necessary. He tilted her chin up to look at him. You know what I realized today? When we were standing in McKenna's office and I was saying those vows? What? That grief and love aren't opposites. They're two sides of the same thing. I'll always grieve Sarah. She gave me too much to just forget. But that grief doesn't cancel out what I feel for you. It just means I've loved deeply, twice now. And that's not something to be ashamed of. No, Ayana agreed. It's something to be proud of. They stood there in the darkness, holding each other, and Ethan felt the weight of the past few months settle into something manageable. The fear was still there. It probably always would be. But it was balanced now by hope, by love, by the simple fact of choosing to move forward. The next few weeks brought their own challenges. There were still people in town who refused to acknowledge Ayana as Ethan's wife. Hargrove's store remained closed to them, though a new merchant who'd just arrived started selling to them at fair prices. The girls dealt with occasional taunts at school, but Mrs. Pruitt dealt with those swiftly and firmly. And slowly, painfully slowly, things improved. Ruth started visiting the ranch once a week, teaching Ayana recipes and trading stories. Elena brought fabric and helped Ayana make new clothes for the girls. Even some of the other mothers from school started nodding to her on the street instead of crossing to avoid her. One afternoon, about a month after the wedding, Ethan came in from the fields to find the house full of women. Ruth, Elena, Mrs. Pruitt, and 3 others he vaguely recognized from town were gathered around the kitchen table with Ayana, working on what looked like a quilt. What's all this? He asked. Quilting circle, Ruth said. We decided Ayana needed proper welcome to the community. And a proper marriage quilt, Elena added. Every bride deserves one. Ayana looked overwhelmed and happy. They teaching me patterns. She's a quick learner, Mrs. Pruitt said. Better than I was at her age. Ethan watched them work. These women who'd chosen to embrace what others feared and felt something like gratitude wash over him. Change was happening. Not everywhere, not all at once, but it was happening. That evening, after everyone had left and the girls were asleep, Ayana showed him the quilt square she'd been working on, a pattern of stars in blue and white. "Is beautiful," he said, "is ours, for our bed, for our life together. I like the sound of that. Our life." She set the square aside and came to him. "You happy, Ethan?" "Yeah, I am. Are you?" "More than I ever think possible," she paused. "I have something to tell you." Something in her tone made him look at her more closely. "What?" "I think, I'm not sure, but I think I might be with child." The words hung in the air for a moment before their full meaning hit him. "You're pregnant?" "Maybe. It's too soon to know for sure, but I feel different, and I know my body." Ethan sat down heavily, his mind racing. Another child. A baby. After everything, after all the loss and grief and rebuilding, new life. "How do you feel about it?" he asked. "Scared. Happy. Both." She sat beside him. "I know is fast. We only married 1 month, but if true, if their baby, I want it. I want family to grow." He took her hands. "So do I. If you're pregnant, if there's a baby coming, that's a gift. Another chance at this whole messy, beautiful thing we're building." She kissed him, and it tasted like hope. 2 months later, the doctor from the next town over confirmed what Ayana had suspected. She was indeed pregnant, due in late spring. The girls were ecstatic. Lily immediately started planning what the baby would wear and what they'd name it. Nora grew protective, hovering near Ayana and insisting she not work too hard. In town, the news was met with mixed reactions. Some people saw it as further proof of Ethan's betrayal of Sarah's memory. Others saw it as what it was, a family growing, life continuing. Ruth brought baby clothes she'd saved from her own children. Elena knitted blankets. Mrs. Pruitt, surprisingly, offered to help Ayana prepare for motherhood, sharing practical advice about childbirth and infant care. As winter settled over the ranch, Ayana's belly began to swell. She continued helping at the school until the cold became too much, then worked from home on lesson plans and materials. The quilting circle met weekly, and the marriage quilt grew larger, more intricate. One evening in late January, a heavy snow began to fall. Ethan brought the horses into the barn and made sure everything was secure. When he came inside, he found Ayana standing by the window, watching the snow accumulate. "You thinking about something?" he said, coming up behind her. "About how different my life is now from 1 year ago." "Different how? 1 year ago I was alone, hiding, afraid every day. I have no home, no family, no hope." She turned to face him. "Now I have all of those things. I have husband who love me, daughters who call me mama, baby growing inside me, home that is safe, people who care. You've given us just as much, more, maybe. We give each other what we need, that's what family is." The next morning they woke to find the world transformed, everything covered in fresh snow, silent and clean. Lily and Nora rushed outside to play, their laughter echoing across the white landscape. Ethan stood on the porch with Ayana, watching them make snow angels and throw snowballs at each other. "You think they'll remember this?" Ayana asked. "When they grown, you think they remember being happy?" "I hope so. I think so. I want them to remember that family is not just blood. Family is choice. They choose me, I choose them, we all choose each other every day. That's a good thing to remember. And I want them to remember that hard times not destroy us. Hard times make us stronger if we face them together." Ethan pulled her close, his hand resting on the small swell of her belly where their child grew. "They'll remember. We'll make sure of it." As winter gave way to spring, Ayana's pregnancy progressed. She moved more slowly now, her belly round and full. The girls helped her with everything, excited and nervous about the baby's arrival. In town, the atmosphere had shifted noticeably. There were still holdouts. Merrick and his closest friends remained hostile, but most people had accepted the reality of Ethan and Ayanna's marriage. Some even seemed happy about it. The traveling merchant who'd been selling to them regularly announced he was opening a permanent store and made it clear that everyone was welcome, regardless of their politics. Hargrove's business suffered for it. One warm April morning, Ayanna woke Ethan before dawn, her face tight with pain. "It's time," she said. "Baby coming." Ethan's heart kicked into high gear. He'd sent word to Elena weeks ago, asking her to be there when the time came. She'd helped birth half the babies in the territory. He threw on clothes and rode to her place at a gallop, returning with her within the hour. The girls were both awake now, hovering anxiously. Elena shooed them out of the room, but let them stay in the house. "Your job is to keep your father calm," she told them. "He's going to be completely useless otherwise." She was right. Ethan paced the kitchen, started coffee, forgot about it, started it again. Lily sat at the table, pale and worried. Nora stood by the door to Ayanna's room, listening. Hours passed. Elena came out periodically to get more water, more towels, to give updates. "She's doing fine. Strong as an ox, that woman." "How much longer?" "These things take time. First babies especially. More hours." The sun climbed higher, peaked, began to descend. Ethan wore a path in the kitchen floor with his pacing. Then, as the sun was setting, he heard it. A cry. High-pitched, angry, alive. Elena appeared in the doorway, her face flushed and smiling. "You have a son, healthy, loud, and already demanding food." Ethan's legs nearly gave out. "A son? A son. Go meet him, but wash your hands first." He did, his hands shaking so badly he could barely work the pump. Then he walked into the room where Ayanna lay, exhausted and radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in one of the quilted blankets. "Ethan," she said softly, "come see." He knelt beside the bed, and she pulled back the blanket. The baby was tiny, red-faced, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that couldn't quite focus yet. He was perfect. "A son," Ethan said, his voice breaking. "Our son," Ayanna corrected. "Yours, mine, and his sister's. What should we name him?" "I was thinking, if you agree, maybe we call him Samuel, after my father." "Samuel." Ethan tested the name. "Samuel Cole. I like it." "Samuel Redfeather Cole," Ayanna said. "He carried both families." "Yeah, both families." Lily and Nora were allowed in then, and they crowded around, staring in wonder at their new brother. "He's so small," Lily whispered. "You were small once too," Ethan said. "Can I hold him?" Nora asked. Ayanna showed her how to support his head, and Nora sat very carefully with the baby in her arms, her face full of awe. "Hi, Samuel," she said softly. "I'm your sister Nora, and this is Lily. We're going to take care of you." That night, after everyone was settled and sleeping, Ethan sat beside the bed holding his son. The baby was awake, making small noises, his tiny hand gripping Ethan's finger with surprising strength. "I'm going to tell you something," Ethan said quietly. "You're going to grow up in a world that's complicated and sometimes cruel. You're going to face people who judge you for who your mother is, for what your family looks like. But you're also going to know something that a lot of people never learn, that family isn't about blood or tradition or what other people expect. It's about choice, about showing up, about loving people even when it's hard." The baby yawned, unimpressed by the speech. Ethan smiled. "Your mother, she's the strongest person I've ever known. She's been through things that would have broken most people, but she kept going. She chose to live, to love, to build something new. And your sisters, they lost their first mother when they were young, but they found room in their hearts for another one. They chose love over fear." He looked at Ayanna, sleeping peacefully now, her face soft in the lamplight. "And me, I was so buried in grief I almost forgot how to be alive. But your mother taught me, she taught all of us, that life goes on, that love doesn't run out, that choosing each other every single day is the bravest thing we can do." Samuel's eyes started to drift closed. "So that's your heritage, son. Not just land or a name, but this family built on choice and courage and refusing to give in to hate. It's a good inheritance, better than money or status or anything else I could give you. The baby was asleep now, his breathing soft and even. Ethan laid him carefully in the cradle he'd built weeks ago, then climbed into bed beside Ayanna. She stirred and turned toward him. "You talking to baby?" she murmured sleepily. "Just telling him about his family." "What you say?" "Daddy's lucky, that we all are." She smiled and closed her eyes again. "We very lucky, even with all the hard parts, especially with the hard parts." "Yeah," Ethan agreed, "especially those." He lay there in the darkness, listening to his wife breathe, listening to his son's tiny snores, and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The loss and the finding, the fear and the courage, the hate they'd faced, and the love that had proven stronger. It wasn't a perfect story. There was no neat ending where everyone came together and all was forgiven. Merrick still glared at them in town. Fisher still muttered threats when he'd had too much to drink. There would always be people who couldn't see past their own fear and anger. But there were also the others. Ruth, who'd chosen to honor her son's memory through compassion instead of vengeance. Elena, who'd stood with them when it would have been easier to look away. Mrs. Pruitt, who'd let herself be changed by someone she'd initially dismissed. The women of the quilting circle, the new merchant, the neighbors who'd slowly started waving again when they passed. And most of all, there was this family, patched together from loss and loneliness, held together by choice and determination. Not perfect, not always easy, but real and solid and worth every moment of struggle it had taken to build. Summer came, and Samuel grew strong and healthy. Lily and Nora doted on him, fighting over whose turn it was to hold him, to feed him, to make him smile. Ayanna glowed with motherhood, somehow managing to care for an infant while still helping at the school and running the household. One evening in July, as they all sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lily asked a question. "Papa, do you think we'll always be together? Like this?" "I don't know about always," Ethan said honestly. "You and Nora will grow up, leave home eventually, Samuel too. But yeah, I think we'll always be a family. Distance doesn't change that." "I don't want to leave," Nora said. "You will someday, and that's okay. That's how it's supposed to work." "But you'll always be our father," Lily said, "and Ayanna will always be our mother." "Always," Ayanna confirmed, shifting Samuel to her other shoulder. "No matter where you go, no matter what you do, you always have home here. You always have us." "And you'll tell Samuel about us?" Lily asked. "When we're gone? About how we became a family?" "Every day if he wants to hear it," Ethan promised. About how his sisters were brave enough to love someone who didn't look like them. About how his mother survived things that should have killed her and chose to build a life anyway. About how all of us, every single one of us, chose each other when we could have chosen fear. "That's a good story," Nora said softly. "Yeah," Ethan agreed. "It is." The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Samuel gurgled contentedly. The girls leaned against their father, watching the last light fade. And Ayanna looked at all of them, at this family she'd found in the dust and blood and fear, and felt something she thought she'd lost forever. Hope. Not the naive kind that expects everything to be easy, but the earned kind that knows how hard life can be and chooses to keep going anyway. She thought about her parents, about the life they'd lived, and the wisdom they'd passed down. About strength that came not from weapons, but from choosing to build when others chose to destroy. About the stars that watched over them, carrying the spirits of those who'd come before. She thought about Sarah, the woman whose loss had created the space for Ayanna to enter this family. And she sent a silent thank you to that ghost for loving these people well enough that they knew how to love again. As the stars came out one by one, Ethan reached over and took Ayanna's hand. She squeezed back, and no words were needed. They both knew what they had, what they'd built, what they'd continue to build. A family. Imperfect, complicated, hard-won, and absolutely real. And in the end, that was more than enough. It was everything. The months turned to years. Samuel grew into a toddler, then a boy, running after his sisters and getting into everything. Lily turned into a young woman, smart and fierce, eventually leaving for school in the East. Nora bloomed slowly but surely, finding her voice and using it to teach at the school where Ayanna had once been an assistant. The town changed too. Merrick eventually died, bitter and alone, his hate consuming him from the inside out. But others softened, learned, grew. New families moved in, bringing fresh perspectives. The merchant store thrived, becoming a gathering place for all kinds of people. And through it all, Ethan and Ayanna built their life together. They added on to the ranch house as the family grew. They weathered droughts and hard winters and the occasional bout of illness. They fought sometimes, because real people in real marriages do. They made up. They kept choosing each other. On their 10th anniversary, Ethan took Ayanna back to the spot where he'd found her, the dry creek bed on the eastern boundary. It had rained recently, and water trickled through it now, bringing life to everything it touched. "You remember what you looked like that day?" Ethan asked. "Half dead, I think." "Yeah. And I remember thinking I was going to regret bringing you home, that it was going to complicate everything." "You were right. It did. Best decision I ever made, though." He pulled her close. "You know what I see when I look back at these 10 years?" "What?" "Proof that love is always a choice. Every single day, I chose you. You chose me. We chose this family, and that's harder than the kind of love that just happens to you. But it's also stronger, because we built it, together." Ayanna looked up at him, her face marked now by time and sun and laughter, more beautiful to him than the day they'd met. "You getting sentimental in your old age? I'm 43. That's not old. You have gray and beard. And you have lines by your eyes. They laugh lines, from being happy. Then they're the best lines I've ever seen." They stood there by the creek, holding each other, and if anyone had asked them how they'd ended up here, two people from completely different worlds, building a life that shouldn't have worked but somehow did, they might have struggled to explain it. Because the truth was, there wasn't one big moment that made it all make sense. There were just 1,000 small ones, 1,000 choices to show up, to try, to forgive, to keep going, 1,000 mornings of waking up and deciding that this messy, complicated, beautiful thing they'd built was worth fighting for. And in the end, maybe that's what love really was. Not the lightning bolt, not the fairy tale, but the daily decision to be there, to build, to choose. As they walked back to the house where their son was waiting, where their daughters would visit come Christmas, where a life full of ordinary miracles continued to unfold, Ethan thought about Sarah one last time. "Thank you," he thought, "for teaching me how to love, for giving me those girls, for building something strong enough that it didn't fall apart when you left. And for wherever you are now, I hope you see this. I hope you know we're okay. Better than okay. We're home."